Hello, Shiver Seekers. Are you ready to follow us into the unknown? I'm Cynthia.
And I'm Stephanie. You found the dark oak. Today I'm going to take you into the world of the wild, wild west, where we will discuss America's first mass murderers, the Bloody Benders.
Welcome to the Dark Oak, the mystery podcast with purpose. Each month through our charity, the Branch of Hope Foundation, we give a portion of our earnings from our Patreon and our sponsorships directly to a nonprofit related to the first episode of the month. To get all the details, go to our website, thedarkoak.com, check out our Instagram, The Dark Oak Podcast, or stick around to the end of this episode.
Thank you, girl. Turns out you were just telling me you're a fan of that old Wild Wild West.
I absolutely am. And it shocked me too. First time I saw a Western movie and I was like, I love this. I want to be a cowboy.
What is it that you like about it?
I really don't know. I think I like the fashion. I like the chaps.
Oh.
I like the guns, and I'm not a gun person, but I like them in a Western.
This is all very surprising, actually.
I know. I like the horses and the sunsets and I like it all. I just like it.
You don't like anything hot.
I don't like any of this in real life, but put it all together and I love it.
Oh, because I was like, you don't really like being dirty or hot.
I know.
And I'm thinking these things don't seem to mesh.
I really don't like being out of my element. I don't like,
No, uncertainty of any kind.
Know. Maybe that's why I like it. Maybe because it's so outside of like who I actually am that it's this cool fantasy.
Did you ever get into Oregon Trail?
Loved it.
You have to love it because we grew up with it and it was the only like computer game we had. But I had a love-hate relationship because I died every time. Was there any chance of actually surviving?
I never survived. I never made it to the final destination.
Okay, well now I don't feel so bad. Did anybody ever?
I highly doubt it.
I actually want to know. I'm going to post it on our Instagram and ask, did anybody ever actually make it to the next level?
Good question. But I will tell you, Stephanie, I don't know that many people made it in real life.
Oh, on the Oregon Trail.
On the Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
So
well, that's
very true to life, I think.
That's probably true.
So,
wow.
Yeah.
That's really depressing.
That's the Wild Wild West for you.
That's the Wild Wild West. Well, are you familiar with the story?
No, I'm not.
Okay, it's been around for a while. I know we're not the first podcast to cover this by any means, but it's a mystery from beginning to end. We're not really sure who these villains are. We're not really sure exactly who they killed, and we're not really sure what happened to them.
Okay.
So, for a mystery podcast,
it sounds perfect.
I feel like this fit all in there.
Yeah.
And I do want to give everybody big virtual cyber hug because you guys are responding like crazy on our Instagram account. And I love it. And it's so encouraging. We're posting fun little videos of Cynthia and I, and it's really been awesome to get all those photos together.
Yeah, I was looking through the Instagram post that you made for Karen Reed Part 2 today, just looking at all the photos again, and that case is still swimming in my brain. So
I've tried to walk away from it. I got to put that case down for a little while. I know it's going to come back up, but man, that was a lot of information. So I know if I'm overwhelmed by it, I know you definitely are.
But the photos helped.
Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. So I think I'm just going to go ahead and get right into this one.
Okay. I'm excited.
In the winter of 1872, George Newton Longcore left Independence, Kansas with his infant daughter, Mary Ann, to resettle in Iowa. Unfortunately, after their departure, they were never seen again. Now, disturbed by their disappearance, George's former neighbor, Dr. William Henry York, decided to go looking for him, which is so nice.
So nice. He must have been a good neighbor.
I really think so. So in the spring of 1873, Dr. William York headed out to question homesteaders along the trail his friend would have taken. Dr. York made it almost 100 miles, reaching as far as Fort Scott, Kansas, before, on March 9th, turning around and beginning his return journey home without any information about his friend. He too, though, never returned home.
Oh.
Oh, as it turns out, Dr. York had two powerful brothers. Edward York of Fort Scott, where he had just visited his brother, and Kansas State Senator Alexander York, a Civil War veteran and attorney who lived in Independence. Now, both knew of Dr. York's travel plans, and when he failed to return to Independence, they immediately began a search for their missing brother.
Sure, yes.
Senator York assembled a company of 50 men to question every traveler along the trail and visit all the area homesteads. And in my book, I call that getting it done.
Especially when, what year is this? 1870?
1872.
Right. And you're getting a team of 50 together to interview everybody. And that's a big deal.
It's definitely somebody you want to have on your side.
Yes.
Senator York also took it upon himself to travel to Labette County and become the lead on the investigation into what turned out to be a number of mysterious disappearances in the area. While it wasn't unusual for people, especially those traveling, to go missing during this time in history, remember it is the 1800s of it all, but things were particularly bad in this stretch of Kansas. In May 1871, the body of a man named Jones was discovered in Drum Creek, an area just south of Independence, with his throat cut and his skull crushed. In February of 1872, the bodies of two men were found in the same area with the same injuries as Jones.
Okay, so maybe a serial killer, an 1800s serial killer.
These aren't accidents.
Right.
This isn't like you got thrown off your horse kind of situation.
Well, when you say it's all in one area, maybe it's just a dangerous area. Or maybe it's dangerous because of
what
the people.
Area in the Wild West isn't a little dangerous?
Right. But this one's especially dangerous.
This one's especially dangerous. By 1873, the year Dr. York disappeared, reports of missing people who had passed through the area had become so common that travelers would begin to avoid the trail altogether. This area has long been known for occurrences of horse thieves and criminals, and again, Wild Wild West, but massive numbers of disappearances were something different altogether. It was through Senator York's inquisition that he was led to a home owned by the Bender family, which functioned both as a store and an inn. Senator York and his comrades talked to Kate, who was age 20, and her brother, John Jr., who was 25. Both acknowledged that Dr. York had stopped at their home on his journey. They said he had watered his horse, made a few small purchases at the store, and then ridden away. Kate, the more sociable of the two, was said to have appeared both honest and genuine. There was nothing suspicious. Kate also informed Senator York that she was a gifted medium and that she would be glad to offer her talents in search of Dr. York. Unfortunately, though, Kate wouldn't be able to perform a seance right then and there as the conditions weren't right, and Senator York had caught her in an off moment. However, don't worry. She said if Senator York would return the next morning when she was rested and ready, she would be glad to help. Oh, and also Senator York should come alone.
Oh, okay. Well, I don't know much about seances, but this is a little scary, whether it's an actual seance or maybe something else.
This was very personal.
Either way.
Very personal.
Frightening.
Now, let me tell you a bit about the colorful characters that make up the Bender family.
You mean beyond the medium who needs a rest?
The very sociable medium that needed a rest before the seance. Yeah. The Benders consisted of 4 individuals: John Sr., or Pa.
Okay.
There was also a Ma Bender.
Of course there was.
A Pa Bender and a Ma Bender. And John Jr. and Kate, who we've already met. And they lived in Cherryvale, Kansas. Now, in a few sources, I actually saw that Ma's first name was also Kate, which would mean that this story was about John and Kate and John and Kate. But that might get kind of confusing. So I'm just going to continue to refer to Ma as Ma because that's too much for me.
It is, but you know what? You know how people are always like, men name their boys after themselves and women never do it. Good for you, Kate. Naming your daughter after yourself.
Good for you. You just make it super confusing.
Yeah, John and Kate or maybe just really easy. Stephanie, maybe it's just really easy.
It's true. They couldn't remember more than 2 names.
If you're a male in our house, your name is John. And if you're a female, your name is Kate. And that's all there is to it.
There's no other option.
Mm-mm.
Well, Ma and Pa Bender primarily spoke German, and the English they spoke was so heavily accented that they were barely understood. While John Jr. and Kate did have accents, they did speak fluent English. Kate, in particular, was known as being very outgoing and engaging with both people and spirits.
She
apparently.
sounds adorable, actually.
Yes.
I kind of like her.
She was said to be.
Yeah.
Kate, who often went by the name Professor Miss Katie Bender.
See? Love her.
I knew you would like that. Was the acknowledged leader in the family. She was known in the region to be able to contact the dead or perform miracles of healing, provided the right price was paid.
That's a given.
We're not going to work for free.
You can't. The spirits don't respond.
She would also conduct seances and give lectures in spiritualism in nearby towns. In these lectures, Kate allegedly advocated for free love and gave her views on why murder was justified. So just in case you were curious. And the Benders would all distribute circulars advertising Kate's abilities and her lectures. We need to spread the good word. Free love and murder.
What I would give to sit under just one of her lectures, I would love it.
Would you even be able to afford it?
Probably not.
I mean, I don't know what she was charging, but Professor Miss Katie Bender.
All about the free love and the
cheap.
murder.
She's not cheap.
Oh my goodness.
Now, one handbill, which Kate circulated around the countryside, read, quote, Professor Miss Kate Bender can heal all sorts of diseases, can cure blindness, fixes deafness, and all such diseases. Also deaf and dumbness. Residence 14 miles east of Independence, on the road from Independence to Osage Mission, 1.5 miles southeast of Moorhead Station, June 18th, 1872. That's all you need to know.
That's it.
Can cure things, fixes anything. That's why she charges a fee.
Yeah, I'd pay for that.
John Jr., by contrast, was known to be social but had very strange manners and tendencies. He would often laugh at seemingly nothing, making people believe he may have had diminished mental capabilities, or as the people of the time referred to as, not my words, their words, the half-wit.
Oh.
This was their common name for him. And I would not have included it in my notes if this wasn't what they regularly referred to him as.
Now, how do we know that he, too, can't speak to spirits, and maybe that's who he's laughing at? I guess we would know that. That would have been part of the story.
All I'm saying is I didn't see any of his circulars. So who knows? Really?
Okay.
Yeah.
Sister got all the talent.
Exactly. Pa Bender had a 160-acre claim along the Osage Mission Independence Trail. John Jr. had his own claim, but he never lived on it or made any improvements to the land, and he instead lived on Pa's claim along with the rest of the family.
Okay.
The Bender family home was a quickly constructed one-room house, and I use the word house very lightly. It was basically a shell, like 4 walls and a roof. There were no partitions in the home, as in no walls or rooms. But the family had divided the one large room into 2 smaller rooms by hanging an old wagon cover and a tattered quilt from a joist spanning the whole space. So when you walk in the front door, there's like a front area that they used as the store. And then there was a hanging sheet, and behind it was their living space. Right.
Now, you're much more into history than I am. Is this like typical homes for the time, or is this very crude even for the time?
I think it's crude for the time.
Okay.
Hastily built and everything. It was almost like they weren't planning on staying there for very long.
Oh.
That's just the impression I got by the description of the house.
Okay.
The living area in the back consisted of a square rusty iron stove and 2 beds. And in the front section, like I said, was the store. And they had also placed a table with several chairs where they could get meals. Travelers could get meals. And one of the chairs was placed directly in front of the wagon cover partition. So the dining person or the guest of honor would have their back to the curtain so they could look out of the front door, if that makes sense.
Okay.
Many travelers found the Benders' home very convenient and would often stop at the house for supplies and a meal. Many others, mostly men traveling alone, were also drawn in by
The lovely
Kate.
Kate.
And she caught their attention with her bright hazel eyes and vivacious personality. And John Jr. would also intercept travelers on occasion and convince them to come and stay the night at the end. According to some accounts, after this initial encounter with the Benders, Senator York knew immediately that he had found his suspects. But history actually records it a little differently. On or around May 1st of 1873, Lee Dick, a county assessor, discovered the Bender home not looking as it normally did. The home started looking unattended and possibly even abandoned. The fields were overgrown, and farm animals were dying in their pens.
Oh, that's
don't
awful.
like any of that. And news spread quickly in the town, and many began to believe that the Benders were actually the next victims.
Oh, I can see that.
Because people were disappearing all over the place.
Sure.
So they thought maybe they were the next victims of this mystery assailant. An inquiry into the Benders' whereabouts led to a nearby train station agent remembering selling tickets to a party of 4 Germans headed to the city of Humboldt. But beyond that, there was no trace of the Benders. A search party was arranged, and townspeople traveling by wagons, buggy, and horseback began gathering at the Benders' home. Of course, Senator York was also sent for, and upon his arrival, a search of the home began. Searchers found the home to appear to have been abandoned in haste. Rags and dirty dishes were strewn about, and furniture was upturned and kicked aside. But the true horrors of the Bender home were only now coming into view. In the back of the one-room home, searchers found a trap door.
Oh, we don't even have normal doors, but we have trap
door. That's right.
Oh.
It was nailed shut.
Ooh.
And had to be pried open. When at last the door was thrown back, a horrible stench arose from the pit.
Ooh, I have chills. Me too. And I had a little suspicion these Benders were bad news.
She did. She was actually making hand gestures about something not good happening over there with the Benders. No man was willing to enter the dungeon.
I don't blame them.
So the searchers waited until the house could be lifted on wood rollers to reveal the horrors that awaited below. Much to everyone's surprise, no bodies were found in the pit.
Good news.
Well, the loose pavement of stones was stained and clotted with blood.
Oh.
Just the leftover bodily fluids caused that much of a stink. It was bad. So the men, determined to find whatever horrible thing had happened, turned to the combined garden and orchard located behind the house to continue their search. And there, the body of Dr. York was found.
Oh, no.
I know, poor Senator York.
Okay, but please tell me, I'm rewinding to the very beginning of the story when you had a father traveling with an infant. Please tell me they are not victims.
It's no good, Cynthia.
Oh.
It's no good.
Oh, okay.
They were 2 of many.
Oh.
Many.
An infant?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Kate. I don't like you anymore.
Yeah, I know. She was the heroine until she wasn't.
Oh, okay.
Dr. York had been thrown face down into a shallow grave. And while records are spotty, it was reported that afterward, 5 to 10 more bodies were found in shallow graves. At the end of the day, when no one thought it could get any worse, searchers looked inside an old well to find the body of a man and his tiny little 5-year-old daughter.
Oh.
And they did eventually find our traveler and his infant, but it wasn't found. They weren't found on this day, but they're
killing
found.
Babies. They're killing babies. They're killing children
everywhere. So this orchard eventually became known as Hell's Half Acre.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Appropriate, right? All the men bore the same marks of violence. Their skulls were crushed from a hammer blow, and all their throats had been cut. 3 iron hammers, a shoe hammer, a claw hammer, and a sledgehammer found at the house appeared to match indentations in some of the skulls. Also, why are there so many different kinds of hammers? I don't know. That really freaks me out.
Yeah. Ugh.
It's like really a horror movie.
It really, well, and I will tell you the first 10 minutes of this, I'm like, oh, this is like a fun, lighthearted story.
No.
And
Did you miss the mass murder part? I did warn you.
You did, but then I got distracted by Kate and
the Wild West.
I know, and I was like in my own mind.
And the chaps. I don't know. The sunsets.
Yeah, I was like, maybe I am Kate. I don't know.
No, sorry. It's just a good thing that Senator York didn't go back for the seance alone. That's all I'm going to say.
Yeah, I'd say so.
Yikes. Now, this trigger warning for child abuse, but the little girl was found. This is the one that was found in the well. She was found with a silk handkerchief tied around her neck. She had been strangled. None of the bodies have been buried for more than 9 months. Wow. They did all of that in 9 months. With the exception of 2 bodies and a collection of bones that had all been kind of mingled together, all the remains were recognizable and were able to be claimed by relatives who did take them for a proper burial. I don't know if that's in any way a solace to any of this, but at least people knew what happened to their loved ones.
Sure, of course. The closure's always, better than not knowing.
Ugh,
but how awful.
How awful. Soon the number of suspected victims of the Benders would soar to 21.
In 9 months?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Insane.
That's worse than like modern day serial killers.
And here's the deal. We're probably never going to know the exact number. They had found those other 3 guys, Jones and the other 2, but how many more were out there? So we're not even really sure. We think we know.
Wow.
Police began to try to piece together what happened at this house of horrors. According to a reconstruction of events, it is believed that after a traveler had been lured into staying at the inn through one method or another, their typical strategy would be to sit them at a seat of honor at the dinner table. This special seat would cause the guest back to again be against the curtain that separated the house. Kate would serve a hot meal or offer her spiritual services to entertain their special guest. At some point during the meal, one family member, most likely either Pa or John Jr., would pull back the curtain and hit the guest in the back of the head with a hammer. The victim would then be dropped down the trap door, and another family member would slit their throats and steal any valuables they might be carrying.
Yowza.
Horrible. Over a dozen bullet holes were found along the house roof and walls, suggesting that some of the Benders' victims may have unsuccessfully put up a resistance before being killed.
Which is saying a lot if they have a gun.
Terrifying.
But you would think, like, if you have a gun, I mean, I realize these aren't modern day guns, but you would think you'd have an advantage over someone with a blade.
Well, yeah, but if you've been gouged in the head,
that's true.
What chance do you have?
That's true.
With a hammer.
Oh, yeah,
I know. From what anyone could tell, the only motivation for the murders was robbery. That's it. Just money. Just money and whatever they had on them, because a lot of these travelers along the road had large amounts of cash in order to purchase land and cattle.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, that makes sense.
Eventually, detectives found the Benders' abandoned wagon and now starving horses. I hate these people. Outside of Thayer, Kansas. In Thayer, they were able to roughly track where the group might have gone from there. All 4 had bought train tickets to go to Humboldt, Kansas. Supposedly, Kate and John Jr. then got off at Chanute, Kansas, and switched to a train going near Denison, Texas. From there, it's thought that the 2 traveled to an outlaw colony, and the trail ended there, as the outlaw colony was an area known to be deadly for law enforcement.
Well, sure.
Wild West. There were areas.
It's so lawless.
Lawless, exactly. Meanwhile, Ma and Pa had gone on to Kansas City. The investigation believed them to have bought tickets going to St. Louis, Missouri, but nothing seems to be known after this. A combined reward of $3,000, roughly $75,000 in 2025, would be offered for information leading to the capture of the Benders, but the search for the family would hit an early roadblock when it was discovered that they had been lying about their identities.
Well, that was smart of them, I guess.
Right. Unless your real name was Ma. Pa.
Ma. I wonder if they were even German. Were they faking the accents?
That would have been really clever. But I don't think that was a fake, but it could have been. Who knows?
Who knows?
Though Ma and Kate were alleged to have actually been mother and daughter, Pa and John Jr. were unrelated to the two women and to each other, at least by blood. Some who knew the family before they fled said that it was clear to them that Kate and John Jr. were a married couple rather than brother and sister.
Okay.
Pa Bender was speculated to be a man named John Flickinger, who had immigrated from either Germany or the Netherlands, and John Jr. was said to actually be named John Gebhardt, based on an inscribed Bible, isn't that comical, which had been found in the house. It was also thought that his attempt to act as if he had diminished mental capabilities was all a performance, and he was simply trying to lure those around him into a false sense of security.
Okay, so when this story started taking like a downward turn, I started wondering, like, okay, how much of any of what's going on is true and how much is being faked?
At this point, it's all, who knows?
Yeah.
It's all up in the air.
Right.
People are dead. I know that for sure.
A lot of people.
Ma had the most extensive backstory of the family. Though she supposedly went by the name Kate or Elvira Bender, she was also said to be named Almira Hill Mark, which was occasionally also reported as Mike. She had been born somewhere in the Adirondack Mountains and first married to a man named Simon Mark, with whom she had 12 children.
Ooh.
The fifth of those children was Kate, who had been born Sarah Eliza Mark. Now, Simon Mark died, and Almira went on to marry a man named William Stephen Griffith, who also died. Both men allegedly were accidentally killed, although it is now suspected that their deaths were no accident.
Yeah.
Highly likely.
Seems like a convenient story, but a lot of people are dying around Ma.
Yeah. What's up, Ma?
How old is she? Do we know? Do we have any idea?
Older. That's all I know.
Okay. 'Cause older in the Wild West, maybe in our age.
I'll show you the pictures. There are sketches of them.
Okay.
And you can try to kind of guesstimate, but in their 40s, 50s.
Okay.
But like Wild West 40 and 50.
Right.
Like they look like 70.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
Just the times.
Not the spring chickens you and I look like we are.
Absolutely. Now, no group or person ever claimed any of the reward money being offered, although several vigilante groups were formed to track down the Benders, and a few even claimed to have found them. One story said that a group had shot Ma, Pa, and John Jr. and then burned Kate alive.
Oh.
A different story told of a group that lynched them and threw the bodies into a river. Yet another story told of a group that killed them all in a gunfight and then buried the bodies. However, and this is why I'm being kind of flippant going through these, none of these stories were ever able to be confirmed, and the search for the Benders went on for at least another 50 years.
I just hope that these 3 vigilante groups that you just mentioned were not actually killing people who were not the Benders.
Could have been.
Because if these stories were true, we got a whole nother problem.
They did it in outlaw country.
No.
To give you an idea of the manhunt, it wasn't unheard of for 2 women traveling together to be accused of being Ma and Kate Bender.
See, that's what I mean. Like, that's terrifying. Exactly. We're just taking it in our own hands.
Yeah. In 1889, 2 women were extradited from Detroit on suspicion of being Ma and Kate. The women went by the names Almira Monroe and Sarah Eliza Davis. Similar name, right? Sarah allegedly told the police that Almira was Ma Bender, but that she was one of Ma's other children, not Kate. However, witnesses in Labette County were not able to conclusively identify the woman, and the case against them never went to trial, and they were released.
Wow, okay.
In 1884, a man named John Flickinger reportedly committed suicide in Lake Michigan. Some believe this man to be Pa Bender, though, of course, this is unconfirmed. It was even rumored that this was not a suicide, but a murder committed by Ma and Kate after Pa fled with valuables stolen from their victims.
Wow.
Outlaws.
They are.
Also in 1884, an old man matching Pa's description was arrested in Montana for a murder he had allegedly committed in Idaho, where the victim was killed with a blow to the head with a hammer.
Okay.
Law enforcement requested identification, but before this could happen, the man severed his own foot in an escape attempt and ended up bleeding to death. By the time someone from Cherryvale was able to arrive, the body had decomposed so badly that identification was impossible. The skull of this man was on display in a saloon in Salmon, Idaho, labeled as Pa Bender, up until 1920, when the bar was closed due to prohibition. After this, the skull disappeared. It's so crazy.
It's crazy. And you know what? I just thought back to Kate's out there talking about how murder is okay. Like, they're not even trying to hide it.
Not that much. Like, they weren't going to get found out. Like, people are just disappearing left and right. They weren't even sneaky. Like, we'll let a few of these go.
Right. And your shell of a house.
Right.
It's where all the evidence is. Eesh.
Just in shallow graves in your orchard. What are you doing?
Yeah, they're just blatant. But I guess, I mean, they didn't get caught, or maybe they did. We don't know.
I didn't include it in my notes, but the things that they stole were outrageous too. Like, they would steal people's horses, the carts, really nice saddles. I mean, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know what they did with them. I don't know if they wound up selling them or what wound up happening. And that's why I didn't include it in here, because we don't know for sure.
Mm-hmm.
But victims' families would come forward and say, we know he was traveling with X, Y, and Z. It's no longer here. So the presumption was that they stole all that stuff.
Right.
Not just money. They would steal anything.
Anything they could probably use or probably sell off.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because I imagine back then there was more of like a bartering type system.
Oh, I'm sure.
So stuff like that could
Especially
be as good
like
as cash.
a really nice, well-bred horse.
Right.
Or a wagon.
Yeah.
It's a big deal.
Yeah.
The crimes, of course, became an immediate sensation when they were reported back in 1873, drawing thousands of curious onlookers to see the Bloody Bender house. Some visitors would even take pieces of the house as a souvenir.
We really haven't changed as a society, have we?
We have not. We are
have
the
not.
same people.
It's like the equivalent of like the true crime podcast people.
Yes.
Like, I went to the house.
Yes.
Look, I have this piece of the curtain.
Exactly. Eventually, because of this, the entire house had to be disassembled because they were worried that someone would wind up getting injured.
Sure.
In the process of trying to remove pieces of the Bloody Bender house. Stories abound that the land on which the house used to be is now haunted. Visitors to the property have often reported glowing apparitions and moaning sounds. Some attribute these occurrences solely to the victims, but others also believe that Kate Bender herself has returned to the land, being forever forced to wander the area. Yeah. I'm not laughing, but I am laughing a little bit. This next part is kind of funny. In 1961, Cherryvale, Kansas opened up the Bender Museum. For the museum, an exact replica of the Bender's cabin was built, and it housed artifacts such as the hammers used in the killings and contemporary photos and newspaper clippings.
Wow.
Yeah, take a moment to let that sink in.
But I would go.
Now, shockingly, some Cherryvale residents weren't happy with the museum as they didn't want their town to be so closely associated with the killings. In 1978, the museum was sadly closed and a fire station was built on the land.
Probably better use of the land.
Probably, even though, I don't know, I think we would have been packing our bags.
I mean, we would have been.
Well, now, especially, I know how much you like the Wild Wild West. I would have been like, Cynthia, get your chaps, get your cowboy boots,
Get my lasso.
get your lasso. Where's your hat? We're out of here.
It's in the closet. I got a real one.
Let's do
it.
I'm going to need a picture of that hat to post on our Instagram account.
All right.
However, don't be sad because the artifacts that were in the replica house have been relocated to the Cherryvale Museum and can still be seen there today. I'm going to be posting pictures of the hammers.
Yeah, that's pretty.
I don't think I want to see the hammers.
No, that's the morbid part.
Like, I don't actually want to see the hammers. Like, seeing the property, because apparently it's a really beautiful property. The trail went through, like, the road has been relocated now, but it used to go through these beautiful, like hills. They're like these beautiful green hills, and the road went right through it. And then the Bender home was right on the side. Now, of course, I mean, it's horrible what happened there, but it's supposed to be just a beautiful field.
Right. And I think you and I both kind of share the whole, like, it's not looking at a murder weapon that is interesting to us. That's actually morbid and gross and sad.
Yeah.
But there is something very interesting about the history of it and what were these people looking at when they decided they're going to take somebody's life? So the history of it.
And just thinking about people having so much bravery. I know that may sound weird, but heading out into the West, I'm going to go just claim some land.
Right.
I don't know anybody around me. I don't know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to go claim some land, and I'm going to try to make a farm, and I'm going to try to move my family here. And it's so much like the American spirit.
Yes.
Now, after all this time, we'll probably never know with any certainty who the bloody Benders truly were or what actually became of them. Today, a Kansas historical marker stands as a rest area near where the house once stood. It reads, quote, "Near here is the Bloody Bender Mounds, named for the famous Bender family. John, his wife, son, and daughter Kate were settled here in 1871. Kate soon gained notoriety as a self-proclaimed healer and spiritualist. Secretly, the four made a living through murder and robbery. Located on the main road, the Benders sold meals and supplies to travelers. Their murders were carried out by using a canvas curtain that divided the house into 2 rooms. When a traveler was seated at the table, his head was outlined against the curtain. The victim was then dispatched from behind with a hammer, and the body was dropped into a basement pit, later to be buried in an orchard. As more and more travelers disappeared, suspicion began to center on the Benders. They disappeared in the spring of 1873, shortly before inquisitive neighbors discovered the victims' bodies. The Benders were believed to have killed about a dozen people, including a child. Although stories abound, the ultimate fate of the murderous Bender family is uncertain. Some say they escaped, others that they were executed by a long, vengeful posse. Their story is unresolved and remains one of the great unsolved mysteries of the Old West."
Wow. What do you think happened
to them?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I think they got away. I just think they got away. I mean, they probably wound up getting killed in some other way.
Like because of the lifestyle.
Because of the lifestyle. So they probably crossed somebody at some point they shouldn't cross. This write-up had to be changed. This is a modern write-up.
Oh.
Because the original one heavily leaned on Kate seducing everyone with her sexy motives. Kate lured people in with her siren song. People said, maybe not lean too much on that, considering she wasn't actually the hammer wielder.
There were 3 other adults involved. Like, can we not pin it on the woman?
Yes, the young woman,
right,
with her scandalous ways.
Quite frankly, she was the youngest of all of them.
Now, she still could have been the ringleader.
And she's an adult.
But it was at some point, they said, okay, you can't put that up there.
Right. But that's scandalous and interesting and sells.
It sells. So just a few years ago. Yeah, exactly. A parcel of land upon which the Benders' house once stood was purchased by a man named Bob Miller, who was a Wells Fargo financial advisor from Independence, Kansas. He had grown up as a child hearing about the Benders and even remembered celebrating the annual community event known as Bender Days.
Oh, that's kind of weird.
Bender Days.
This
practice is no longer
okay, because I'm like, that's a little gross.
But it was for like over 100 years. They had Bender Days. It was like a big festival. Isn't that weird?
Celebrating murderers. Like, you and I have talked many times, like, we don't get into like the serial killers and who's your favorite serial killer and stuff like that's it's gross. I think
I can't get into
we don't celebrate the killers.
No. So this seems kind of strange to me, but again, Cherryvale did have a whole museum with a replica house, and then they celebrated these Bender Days. It's a little weird. They don't do it anymore, thank goodness.
But we kind of talked about it a little bit in the Lizzie Borden coverage. Like some of these cases where we're really far removed and they're just kind of like legend, it almost doesn't feel real.
I
It
can see
feels
that
like
a little bit. Yeah.
Halloween-y and fun and like stuff.
The legend, except it's not.
Right. So I can see what the draw. I can. But when you stop and think about it, it's kind of gross.
Right. For 65 years prior to Bob's purchase of the property, a family had owned the land, but they had no interest in the history of it and they just farmed it out. But according to an interview at the time of the purchase, Bob said as soon as he saw the property come up for auction, he knew he had to bid on it. He won it by purchasing a package of parcels that included the Bender site, although he did decline to disclose how much he had paid for it. He said, quote, "I bought it because I love history and I would love to find out where the killings happened. I've never had an acre of land before. Somewhere, somehow, some way, I'm going to get some kind of expert investigation going on there. The whole thing is just so bizarre and one of America's first documented mass murders," end quote. Bob said he plans to investigate the site to define the exact location of the cabin and the orchard, both of which have been lost over time. He plans to bring in a team of professional archaeologists, perhaps from Kansas University, to do a ground-penetrating radar study to possibly undertake excavations. Bob said, quote, "There may be more to the Bender story than we know. The location of the cellar, abattoir, or the orchard cemetery may lead to discoveries that were not possible with 1870s technology. Some of the victims were never identified. If we could find some stuff like bones or maybe some teeth, that would allow for DNA matching with living relatives." And he's right.
Yeah.
Among the skeletons found on the Bender farm, there were bundles of bones from different skeletons that had been grouped together. And while most were, again, identified, there were definitely some that weren't. In addition, most of the bodies that were found during the original excavation were found through probing. So literally they walked around on the property poking holes in the ground.
So there may be more.
Absolutely.
There probably are more.
There probably are more. I am excited to share that last year, Bill got his wish. The Kansas University Department of Anthropology and the Kansas Geological Survey came out to do an excavation of the Bloody Benders site.
Please tell me you have results from this.
I don't have anything yet.
Okay.
Apparently, they excavated for about 10 days, and they said it would take them 10 months to analyze anything that they found. And they're doing it very, very meticulously. And I actually love this. Most of the anthropologists they had out there were students. So they're going extra slow to be able to teach them how to dig on a real site.
Sure, a real hands-on learning experience. So that's amazing.
That's exactly right. So we don't know what they found yet, but we do know that excavations are underway and we should know more about what's happening at the site pretty soon. Kansas archaeologist Chris Horde said, "It's an important site, especially because good people lost their lives here. So it was a makeshift graveyard for a while. To do this work here is a way of honoring, I think, the people that lost their lives here. And there were more people who lost their lives here, I'm sure, than the people that wound up being buried here." So I think it's really lovely that these anthropologists are aware of what happened there and not just the history in like a dark kind of way, but understanding and honoring the people that lost their lives there, being able to find any additional bodies if they're there and being able to hook them based on genealogy reports, being able to hook them back to their families. So I guess we'll give you any updates if they find anything. So here we are. Classic American story full of mystery. We have no idea who the assailants were, exactly who was killed or how, and we have no idea what became of the bad guys.
Ugh.
A classic American mystery.
It is. Yikes.
Yikes. So, I don't know, us women just luring in these men to get their heads bashed in.
Oh gosh. It was kind of a barbaric time, right? Like,
absolutely.
So
even like modern medicine. Say you are like even amongst the quote good guys, like
right.
Even modern medicine was very barbaric.
Right.
I think at this point, even like duels and things were still very popular.
So does that change like the way people look at murder? Like, if we had lived in that time, would we not be so affected by it? Do you still feel like sympathy and empathy for the loss of human life when you're constantly just surrounded by that?
I think you would. At the top of the story, we talked about a neighbor trying to find his other
That's
neighbor
true.
and a brother trying to find his brother. So, I think it was very similar to what we have now. And I think somebody falling off their horse and dying or somebody being in a duel is one thing, but to just have your head bashed in when you're getting a meal.
And to be like killing children. Because that's the thing
And
that
killing
really
children.
gets me
Yeah.
is, what did those innocent children do?
Yeah.
You could have literally just left them alone. They're not going to be able to do anything. They're not going to be able to identify you.
Or just let the father go.
Right.
What did he have on him that you just couldn't live without?
Right.
His saddle, a hat, his boots.
I bet you he would have given it if you'd let him walk away.
Of course.
So yeah. But then I just think, okay, I'm looking at it through like who I am in 2025 in the culture I live in. Would I look at it differently if I were back then? It's just interesting. A lot of what happened back then, we would just be appalled by now.
But it's a story that could never happen now because of like the lost identities of the people.
Right.
I feel like we would know something. Like we would know who they were originally or where they wound up going, especially all four. I feel like we would at least caught a few of them.
Sure. Yes.
Or they would have wound up squealing on each other. I have a hard time believing like conspiracies because somebody's going to squeal. So, like, I feel like somebody's going to say something.
Of course.
And so the four of them, now they all did split up. Who knows? And they were living in outlaw country.
Yeah. Ooh.
So outlaws turning in outlaws or just killing each other. Or, dude cut off his own leg.
I know
to avoid capture.
Yeah, which I need more information because generally I would think cutting off your own leg might slow you down a little bit. But, who knows?
Who knows? And again, even if it wasn't Paw Bender, what's up with that guy?
I'm telling you, it was a barbaric time.
What's up with that dude?
It's kind of why I really, truly am like drawn to it because it's just like anything goes. Just like anything goes.
Oh, I almost said fun, but then I was like, no, this is not fun. I don't want to do any of this.
There were moments of fun in this. Yeah. I really liked getting to know Kate until I really got to know Kate. And then I'm like,
Well, you know what? I have a feeling a lot of people thought that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I liked you until I didn't.
Ugh. Oh,
yeah.
Kate.
Okay, should we do a little branch of hope?
Yes, please.
Our branch of hope for January of 2025 is Victim Connect Resource Center, and it's a referral helpline where crime victims can learn about their rights and options confidently and compassionately. Victim Connect offers trauma-informed service and referrals in over 200 languages, and they provide emotional support, information, and referrals that empower visitors as they navigate the physical, emotional, legal, and financial consequences of crime. Referrals are tailored to individual needs and can be made to local, state, and national organizations. And I know we've gone over the list several times, so I won't add it all in here, but any crime. So domestic violence, race crimes, homicides, child abuse, elder abuse, financial fraud, they cover all of them. And it's just such an incredible resource. If you or someone you know has been a victim of a crime and you're looking for resources in any way, legally, emotionally, mentally, physically, these folks can help. You can reach out to them at 1-855-484-2846, or you can chat online. And again, if you're part of our Patreon, know that a portion of your money is going to go to Victim Connect to be able to help victims of crime in the United States. If that speaks to you, we would love to have you be part of our Patreon. You get some additional content from Cynthia and I. We release a full-length episode every month. We have a live. We have a special Facebook page for you. And, you're just our special people.
That's right.
And I am bringing next week's case, which is one that is truly turned into a personal case for me. It's the case of missing Paula Miranda Rosa. And I have personally spoken with her family and really feel like we can do this family a lot of good by sharing Paula's case. I feel like it's an honor to bring it next week, and I really hope you come back for that. It's a really important case and a family that we would love to support.
I am really highly anticipating your coverage of this case because this is local to Stephanie and I. We drive past her missing person signs, have been doing so for years. And this case has not gotten as much coverage as it should have gotten from what Stephanie has told me. So I am really, really anticipating this coverage because I want to help.
Yeah,
I want to help.
We've been personally following the case because, again, it's local to us and she's around our age and there's just a lot of similarities. And they're changing some of the way they're handling the case now. And I think this is the right time for the Dark Oak to get involved and help. And I almost feel like this might be a passion project for us for 2025. So I want to give you guys all the details so we can rally around this family and, again, give them a lot of support and love.
Yes. Be here. Be here next week.
Be here.
All right.
See you next week.
Bye.
Bye-bye, Shipper Seekers.
This episode of The Dark Oak was created, researched, written, recorded, hosted, edited, published, and marketed by Cynthia and Stephanie of Just Us Gals Productions, and made possible by you, our shiver-seeking listener. Special thanks goes to Justice Himes for our incredible artwork and Ryan Crete for our amazing music.